Marcus Grant stood at the window of his penthouse office overlooking the sprawling airport terminals where dozens of aircraft bearing the distinctive Skyward Airways livery taxied across the tarmac. 27 years had passed since he'd mortgaged everything he owned to lease his first small turboprop aircraft and launch what was then a tiny regional carrier operating out of a single gate at a secondary airport. The memory of those early days remained crystal clear. The cramped office barely large enough for a desk and two chairs, the endless hours spent poring over route maps and fuel consumption calculations, the sleepless nights wondering if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But Marcus had possessed something that set him apart from other aviation entrepreneurs: an unwavering vision of making air travel accessible to everyone, not just the business elite or the wealthy. His first route connected two underserved cities with a twice-daily service using a refurbished 30-seat aircraft that had seen better days, but Marcus insisted on maintaining impeccable service standards. Even then, each passenger was greeted personally. The coffee was fresh and hot, and the seats, though worn, were spotlessly clean. The initial months were brutal, with load factors hovering around 40% and costs eating away at their minimal capital reserves. Competitors laughed at his business model, predicting Skyward's imminent failure, but Marcus remained steadfast, implementing innovative pricing strategies that allowed flexible booking options and introducing loyalty programs that rewarded frequent travelers from small communities. The turning point came during a severe winter storm when larger carriers canceled their flights, but Skyward's pilots, skilled in adverse weather operations, maintained service. This dedication to reliability caught the attention of business travelers who began choosing Skyward for its dependability rather than its price point alone. Marcus reinvested every dollar of profit into expanding operations, gradually adding routes and upgrading equipment. He personally interviewed every pilot and flight attendant in those early days, ensuring they shared his vision of accessible quality air travel. His hands-on approach extended to maintenance decisions, where he often worked alongside mechanics to understand the technical challenges they faced. This intimate knowledge of operations proved invaluable as Skyward expanded. Regional growth came first, with strategic route additions connecting secondary markets to major hubs. Marcus's innovative hub-and-spoke system maximized aircraft utilization while minimizing operational costs. The acquisition of their first new aircraft marked a significant milestone, financed through a combination of traditional loans and an innovative revenue-sharing agreement with airport authorities. This expansion phase brought new challenges, requiring Marcus to delegate responsibilities he'd previously handled personally, but he maintained his commitment to understanding every aspect of the operation, regularly visiting stations, talking with ground crews, and flying on his own aircraft to observe service standards. The transformation into a national carrier happened gradually but deliberately, each new route carefully planned, each aircraft acquisition meticulously analyzed. Marcus resisted the temptation to grow too quickly, maintaining strict financial discipline that would later prove crucial during industry downturns. The introduction of international services marked another watershed moment. Carefully selected routes to underserved markets in Latin America and Europe proved highly successful, establishing Skyward as a serious player in the global aviation market. The airline's fleet grew from that single turboprop to a modern array of narrow and wide-body aircraft, each chosen for specific route requirements and operational efficiency. Throughout this expansion, Marcus never lost sight of his original vision of accessible quality air travel. Innovative pricing structures and superior service remained cornerstones of Skyward's operations, even as they competed with larger established carriers. The airline's reputation for reliability and customer service attracted premium passengers while maintaining its appeal to cost-conscious travelers. This balanced approach proved particularly valuable during economic downturns when other airlines struggled. Skyward's diverse customer base helped maintain stable load factors. Technological innovation played a crucial role in Skyward's growth. Marcus invested heavily in developing proprietary booking systems and maintenance tracking software that gave the airline a competitive edge in operational efficiency. These systems later became industry standards, licensed to other carriers, creating an additional revenue stream. The establishment of Skyward's Training Academy marked another significant milestone, providing standardized, high-quality training for flight crews, maintenance personnel, and ground ground staff. This investment in human resources ensured consistent service standards across the expanding network. The addition of cargo operations further diversified revenue streams with dedicated freighter aircraft serving high-demand routes. This division quickly became profitable, contributing significantly to the airline's bottom line. Marcus's approach to expansion always prioritized sustainable growth over rapid expansion, refusing to take on excessive debt or enter markets without thorough analysis. This conservative financial strategy meant Skyward maintained strong cash reserves, allowing it to weather industry downturns and take advantage of opportunities when they arose. The airline's commitment to environmental responsibility, demonstrated through fleet modernization and operational efficiency initiatives, earned praise from environmental groups and attracted environmentally conscious travelers. Strategic alliances with regional carriers extended Skyward's reach without the capital investment of direct operations. These partnerships, carefully structured to maintain service standards, proved highly successful in expanding the airline's effective network. Employee profit-sharing programs implemented early in the airline's growth ensured staff benefited directly from the company's success. This approach fostered a strong sense of ownership and commitment among employees, contributing significantly to service quality and operational efficiency. Marcus's vision of accessible quality air travel had evolved into a multinational operation serving millions of passengers annually, yet the principles remained unchanged: reliable service, fair pricing, and respect for customers and employees alike. The transformation from a single-route regional carrier to a global airline stood as a testament to the power of clear vision, careful planning, and unwavering commitment to core values. The story of Skyward Airways became a case study in sustainable growth and operational excellence, taught in business schools and cited by industry analysts as an example of successful airline management. Marcus's journey from a small office to leading a major airline demonstrated that success in aviation required more than just business acumen. It demanded a deep understanding of operations, unwavering commitment to service quality, and the ability to build and maintain strong teams. The airline's growth from handling a few hundred passengers daily to serving millions annually while maintaining consistent service standards represented a remarkable achievement in an industry known for its operational complexity and thin profit margins. Skyward's evolution from regional carrier to global airline, while remaining true to its founding principles of accessible quality air travel, stood as Marcus's greatest achievement. Though he could not have anticipated the challenges that lay ahead, success had a way of changing things subtly at first, then with increasing momentum. As Skyward Airways grew into a global powerhouse, Marcus found himself spending more time in corporate boardrooms than airport terminals. The transformation was gradual, almost imperceptible. The first signs appeared during quarterly earnings calls, where discussion centered increasingly on profit margins and market share rather than customer satisfaction and employee well-being. Marcus noticed the shift in how people addressed him. Gone were the casual conversations with mechanics about engine performance, replaced by formal presentations from maintenance directors complete with PowerPoint slides and efficiency metrics. The daily operational briefings he once attended in person now came to him in the form of carefully curated reports stripped of the human elements that had once made them so valuable. His corner office on the 50th floor offered a commanding view of the city, but it might as well have been on another planet from the bustling terminals below, where thousands of Skyward employees worked tirelessly to keep the airline running. The distance wasn't just physical, it was psychological, emotional, a growing chasm between the corporate suite and the operational reality. Board meetings became increasingly focused on shareholder value and market positioning, discussions that would have seemed alien in the early days of the airline, when success was measured by on-time departures and passenger smiles. The corporate culture began to shift almost imperceptibly. At first, executive assistants started screening his calls more rigorously. Middle managers appeared between him and the frontline staff, creating layers of bureaucracy that filtered and sanitized information before it reached his desk. The quarterly town halls, once intimate affairs where any employee could voice concerns directly to the CEO, transformed into carefully orchestrated presentations with questions submitted in advance and answers crafted by the public relations team. Even his airport visits changed. Security details and advanced teams now preceded him, smoothing his path and inadvertently creating an artificial environment that bore little resemblance to the daily reality of airport operations. The simple act of walking through a terminal became an event. Employees who once greeted greeted him casually now stood at attention, their natural behavior replaced by rehearsed professionalism. The boardroom itself became a symbol of this disconnect. Rich mahogany tables and leather chairs, a far cry from the plastic seats and folding tables of the airline's early days. The faces around that table changed too. Gone were the aviation enthusiasts who shared his passion for flight, replaced by financial experts and management consultants whose understanding of the airline industry came from spreadsheets rather than experience. Lunch meetings once held in the employee cafeteria moved to exclusive restaurants where the price of a single meal could exceed a flight attendant's daily pay. The language of leadership evolved to terms like optimization and restructuring replaced discussions of service improvement and employee satisfaction. Financial metrics dominated conversations, EBITDA, load factors, and yield management, pushing aside traditional measures of airline success like customer satisfaction and employee retention. The technological advances that had once brought him closer to operations now served to isolate him. Real-time data streams and analytics dashboards replaced personal observation and direct feedback, creating an illusion of control and understanding that masked deeper issues. Corporate communications became increasingly sanitized. Quarterly newsletters, once written from the heart, now went through multiple revisions by the legal and public relations departments, stripping them of authenticity and personal connection. The executive floor became its own ecosystem with its own culture and priorities, increasingly disconnected from the operational realities below. Security protocols implemented for his safety created invisible barriers between him and the employees who had been the backbone of Skyward's success. Casual conversations became impossible. Spontaneous meetings with staff rare. The executive dining room, once open to all employees, became an exclusive space, further separating leadership from the workforce. The corporate jet, acquired for efficiency, became a symbol of the growing divide, whisking executives between meetings without experiencing the product they managed. The airline's own flights. The annual management retreat, once a working session focused on operational improvements, transformed into a luxury affair at exclusive resorts where discussions of cost-cutting measures took place in surroundings that screamed excess. Employee recognition programs became standardized, losing the personal touch that had made them meaningful. Award ceremonies, once intimate celebrations of individual achievement, turned into grand corporate events where recipients felt more like props than valued team members. The distance affected decision-making. Two policies were created and implemented without proper understanding of their impact on frontline operations. Cost-saving measures looked excellent on paper but failed to account for their effect on employee morale and customer experience. The corporate calendar, filled with investor meetings, industry conferences, and board presentations, left little time for the operational involvement that had been the cornerstone of Marcus's leadership style. His office became a bubble where bad news was filtered and operational challenges were presented as sanitized data points rather than human issues. The quarterly performance reviews focused increasingly on financial metrics, treating employees as numbers rather than individuals. The succession planning process emphasized academic credentials and financial acumen over operational experience and leadership qualities. Even the art on the office walls changed from photographs of aircraft and crew to abstract corporate pieces that could have hung in any Fortune 500 company. The executive team expanded with each new hire, adding another layer between Marcus and the operational staff. New positions created to manage various aspects of the business further complicated the organizational structure, making it increasingly difficult for ground-level concerns to reach the top. The company's rapid expansion meant Marcus no longer knew every manager, let alone the frontline staff. The personal connections that had defined Skyward's early culture became impossible to maintain in a global operation of tens of thousands. The corporate communication style evolved into carefully crafted messages that, while professional, lacked the authenticity and warmth that had once characterized internal communications. The growing reliance on consultants and external advisors further removed decision-making from operational realities. Their recommendations, based on industry benchmarks and theoretical models, often failed to account for Skyward's unique culture and operational challenges. Board presentations became exercises in financial projection with little discussion of the human factors that had once been central to decision-making. The disconnect manifested in subtle ways, like the increasing use of corporate jargon in place of plain speaking, the preference for video conferences over face-to-face meetings, and the gradual shift from operational metrics to purely financial ones. As success bred success, the very qualities that had made Skyward unique began to fade, replaced by standard corporate practices and policies. The airline's growth had created a paradox. While making it more successful than ever, it had also separated its leadership from the foundations of that success. The moment of clarity came during a routine executive meeting when Marcus found himself staring at a presentation slide showing employee satisfaction metrics. The numbers were within acceptable industry standards, but something about them felt wrong, deeply wrong. He remembered the passionate discussions from the airline's early days, the way every employee's concern mattered, the direct connection between leadership and staff that had made Skyward different, special. The realization hit him with a force of clear air turbulence. He had lost touch with the very essence of what made his airline successful. The decision to go undercover didn't come as a sudden inspiration, rather it grew from a series of small observations that had been nagging at him for months: the way ground staff tensed up during his rare airport visits, the carefully scripted nature of his interactions with crew members, the increasing frequency of sanitized reports that somehow never quite captured the real issues. Marcus spent a week quietly observing his own behavior, how he relied on intermediaries for information, how he hadn't actually flown on one of his own aircraft in economy class for years, how he had become exactly the type of disconnected executive he had once criticized. The tipping point came during a late-night review of customer feedback reports. Something about the formal language and categorized complaints felt artificial. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing the real story, the human element that had once been at the heart of every decision he made at Skyward. The plan began to take shape during a solitary evening in his office as he watched his planes taking off and landing in the distance. He needed to see the airline through different eyes, experience it as his passengers and employees did, without the filter of corporate reports and prepared presentations. He needed to become invisible. The logistics of such an undertaking were complex. Marcus knew he couldn't simply walk onto a plane and expect not to be recognized. Years of corporate videos, internal communications, and media appearances had made his face familiar to most Skyward employees. He needed help, someone he could trust implicitly, someone who understood both the corporate and operational sides of the airline. Rebecca, his executive assistant, had been with him for 15 years. She had started as a flight attendant, worked her way through customer service management, and earned her position through a combination of competence and unwavering integrity. When Marcus called her into his office that afternoon, she knew something was different. The usual stack of reports and documents was missing from his desk. Instead, a single notepad lay before him with a few handwritten notes. The conversation began cautiously, Marcus testing the waters, sharing his concerns about the growing disconnect between management and operations. Rebecca listened carefully, years of experience allowing her to read between the lines of what her boss was saying. The plan, when he finally revealed it, struck her as both brilliant and dangerous. Brilliant because it could provide the unfiltered truth, dangerous because that truth might be harder to handle than anyone anticipated. The discussion lasted hours, moving from practical considerations to deeper questions about corporate culture and leadership responsibility. Rebecca raised valid concerns about security, about the potential impact on employee morale if the deception was discovered, about the legal implications of a CEO essentially spying on his own company. But she also understood the fundamental rightness of what Marcus was proposing, the need to reconnect with the airline's operational reality. The transformation would require careful planning. Marcus would need a new identity, complete with documentation that could withstand scrutiny, a background story that explained his presence without raising suspicions, and most importantly, a physical transformation that would make him unrecognizable to his own employees. The details emerged gradually as they talked through scenarios. Marcus would become Michael James, a mid-level business consultant traveling regularly for work, a plausible cover that would explain his presence in business class while allowing him to observe both premium and economy service. The physical transformation would include subtle but effective changes: hair color and style, contact lenses to change his eye color, carefully selected clothing that would help him blend into the crowd of business travelers. They discussed timing, choosing a route that would provide the most comprehensive view of Skyward's operations. The New York to Chicago route emerged as the ideal candidate, busy enough to stress test the system but not so premium as to be atypical. The practical aspects of maintaining his cover story while fulfilling his CEO responsibilities required careful consideration. Rebecca would need to manage his calendar, creating plausible excuses for his reduced visibility while ensuring the company continued to function smoothly. They discussed contingency plans, what to do if he was recognized, how to handle potential emergencies that might require him to break cover. The weight of the decision became clearer as they delved into the details. This wasn't just about gathering information, it was about fundamentally challenging the barriers that success had built around leadership. The risks were significant. Discovery could embarrass The company damage employee trust and potentially create legal issues, but the potential benefits, the chance to see the unvarnished truth about his airline's operations, seemed to outweigh the risks. As the discussion continued past midnight, the plan became more detailed, more real. Rebecca's initial skepticism evolved into cautious enthusiasm. She began to see beyond the immediate challenges to the potential for genuine positive change. The transformation would take time. They decided on a 2-week preparation period, allowing for the creation of the Michael James identity, the necessary physical changes, and the careful rearrangement of Marcus's schedule. They discussed the scope of the operation, how many flights he should take, which aspects of the operation he should focus on, and how to gather information without raising suspicions. The emotional weight of the decision became apparent as they talked through scenarios. Marcus would be seeing his life's work through entirely different eyes, experiencing the airline he had built as millions of passengers did every day. The possibility of disappointment, of discovering that Skyward had strayed further from its founding principles than he imagined, loomed large, but the alternative, continuing in ignorance of the real state of his airline, seemed increasingly impossible. As dawn approached, Marcus and Rebecca had created not just a plan but a mission to rediscover the soul of Skyward Airways. The decision, once made, felt right despite, or perhaps because of, its risks. It represented a return to the hands-on leadership that had characterized the airline's early days. The final details fell into place as they reviewed their plans one last time. Rebecca would handle the practical arrangements while Marcus prepared himself mentally for the challenge ahead. They both understood that this decision would either reinvigorate Skyward's culture or reveal problems that could no longer be ignored. Either way, there would be no going back. The decision to go undercover represented more than just a fact-finding mission. It was a recommitment to the principles that had made Skyward successful in the first place. As Marcus left his office that morning, the weight of the decision settled around him like a comfortable old jacket. He was about to see his airline through new eyes, and he was ready for whatever truths awaited him. The transformation began immediately with attention to every minute detail. Rebecca, working tirelessly behind the scenes, coordinated with a discreet network of trusted professionals to create Michael James's identity. The process started with physical appearance. Marcus visited an upscale salon in a neighboring city where his signature silver hair was dyed in nondescript brown and styled differently. Contact lenses changed his distinctive blue eyes to a common hazel shade. A carefully cultivated stubble replaced his clean-shaven look. Professional stylists selected a new wardrobe, deliberately chosen to be forgettable mid-range business attire that would help him blend into the crowd of traveling executives. Nothing too cheap, nothing too expensive, everything designed to make him invisible in plain sight. The creation of Michael James's background story required meticulous attention to detail. Rebecca worked with trusted contacts to establish a digital footprint for his alias, creating a LinkedIn profile for a mid-level consultant with a reasonable but not exceptional career history, a carefully curated selection of professional connections, and just enough activity to appear genuine without drawing attention. The background story was crafted with precision. Michael James became a management consultant specializing in supply chain optimization for medium-sized manufacturing companies, a profession chosen specifically because it would explain regular travel without raising questions about his knowledge of the airline industry. Subtle details were added to make the character more convincing: a graduate degree from a respectable but not elite university, membership in relevant professional organizations, and a work history that could withstand casual scrutiny. The practical aspects of the transformation demanded equal attention. Marcus spent hours practicing different walking patterns, consciously changing his usual confident stride to something more anonymous. He worked with a voice coach to modify his speech patterns, slightly altering his natural authoritative tone to something more middle management appropriate. He practiced writing in a different style for any forms he might need to complete during his travels. Everything about Michael James was designed to deflect attention rather than attract it. The logistics of the operation required careful planning. Rebecca arranged for the flight bookings through a series of legitimate but obscure travel agencies, ensuring that no direct connection to Skyward's corporate offices could be traced. She created a comprehensive travel itinerary that included hotel reservations and ground transportation, all consistent with the profile of a traveling consultant. The selection of the specific New York to Chicago flight was strategic, chosen because it was one of Skyward's busiest routes with a mix of business and leisure travelers. The flight time was carefully selected midweek during peak business travel hours when the crew would be under maximum pressure. The preparation extended to creating a complete set of business materials appropriate for Michael James's cover story, a laptop loaded with generic business software presentations about supply chain optimization that could be visible on his screen during the flight, business cards with a generic consulting firm logo, and even a leather portfolio with appropriate notes and documents. Security considerations were paramount. Marcus and Rebecca developed a series of protocols for emergency communication. A secure phone line was established that would bypass normal corporate channels, allowing them to communicate if absolutely necessary. Contingency plans were created for various scenarios: what to do if he was recognized, how to handle a medical emergency or security incident without breaking cover, how to respond to unexpected questions about his background. The physical preparation was grueling. Marcus spent days practicing basic activities while maintaining his new identity, learning to move differently, speak differently, even eat differently. He practiced using his new credit cards and ID, signing with his new signature until it became natural. He memorized every detail of Michael James's life history, ready to answer any casual questions that might arise from fellow passengers or crew members. Rebecca arranged for a series of test runs, having Marcus interact with strangers in various settings to ensure his cover story held up under casual scrutiny. Each interaction was analyzed and adjustments were made to make his character more convincing. The timeline was compressed but thorough: 2 weeks of intensive preparation covering every aspect of the operation. The first week focused on creating the physical and digital elements of Michael James's identity, the second on practicing and perfecting the performance. Technical details were not overlooked. Marcus learned the specific features and benefits of Skyward's frequent flyer program from the customer's perspective, understanding the frustrations and limitations that regular passengers encountered. He studied the airline's booking and check-in procedures from the user side, experiencing the same digital interfaces that customers struggled with daily. The preparation included understanding the current state of Skyward's customer service policies. Marcus reviewed public feedback about the airline on various platforms, familiarizing himself with common complaints and issues, but being careful not to let this knowledge influence his observations during the actual flight. Psychological preparation was equally important. Marcus worked with Rebecca to develop strategies for maintaining his composure when witnessing poor service or experiencing frustrations. They discussed ways to engage naturally with crew and fellow passengers without arousing suspicion or appearing too interested in airline operations. The final days of preparation involved detailed rehearsals of specific scenarios: how to handle delays, cancellations, or service issues as a regular passenger, how to maintain his cover during security screening and boarding procedures, how to interact with flight attendants without revealing his extensive knowledge of airline operations. Marcus practiced these scenarios repeatedly until his responses became natural and unforced. The night before the operation was scheduled to begin, Marcus and Rebecca conducted a final review of all preparations. Every detail was checked and double-checked. Emergency protocols were confirmed, contingency plans were verified, and final adjustments were made to his appearance and story. The weight of the upcoming mission settled over them as they completed their preparations, both understanding that the next day would mark the beginning of a journey that could fundamentally change Skyward Airways. The transformation was complete. Michael James existed not just on paper but as a fully realized identity, ready to experience Skyward Airways as a regular passenger. The success of the operation would depend on Marcus's ability to maintain this carefully constructed facade while gathering the unfiltered truth about his airline's operations. As dawn approached on the day of the flight, the preparations were complete. Michael James was ready to board his first flight as just another passenger on Skyward Airways. The morning of the flight brought with it a surge of nervous energy as Marcus, now fully transformed into Michael James, approached the Skyward Airways terminal at JFK. The experience began before he even entered the building. Watching from his rideshare as passengers struggled with luggage at the crowded drop-off point, no staff in sight to assist. The automatic doors were sluggish, one completely non-functional, creating a bottleneck of frustrated travelers. The check-in area presented its own revelations. The premium check-in line, where he would normally have been whisked through as CEO, was efficiently staffed, while the economy line stretched in serpentine fashion with only 2 agents visible. The digital check-in kiosks that he had proudly unveiled 6 months ago were experiencing technical issues, 3 of the 8 machines displaying out-of-order messages while a single IT technician moved between them attempting repairs. Marcus observed how the check-in agents handled the mounting pressure. Karen, his assigned agent, maintained a professional demeanor, but her smile never reached her eyes. Her movements were mechanical, efficient, but lacking the warmth that had once been a Skyward trademark. When an elderly passenger requested assistance with his heavy bag, Karen hesitated, glancing at the growing line before reluctantly helping. The interaction lasted no more than 30 seconds, but the passenger's grateful smile was met with merely a practiced nod. Security presented another set of observations. Skyward's premium passenger lane, a recent investment meant to streamline the process for business travelers, was indeed faster, but Marcus noticed how it created visible resentment among economy passengers forced to watch as others breezed past their crawling line. The premium security staff were notably more courteous, their economy counterparts seemingly resigned to processing an endless stream of increasingly frustrated travelers. The gate area revealed more subtle issues, the digital display showing an on-time departure, but the gate agent's body language suggested otherwise. She was repeatedly checking her phone, making quiet calls that Marcus recognized as the signs of an incoming delay, yet no announcement was made to the waiting passengers. The boarding process itself became a study in inconsistency. Despite Skyward's carefully designed boarding protocols, groups were called too quickly, overlapping each other, creating unnecessary congestion in the jet bridge. Marcus noticed how the gate agent's attention focused primarily on premium passengers, their boarding passes checked with care while economy passengers were processed with assembly line efficiency. The first interaction with the flight crew proved especially enlightening. Flight attendant Karen Young, ambitious and clearly well-trained, greeted premium passengers with textbook proficiency, but Marcus observed how her demeanor shifted subtly when dealing with different passengers. Her warm smile and attentive service reserved primarily for those in business attire, while younger passengers, families and tourists received more perfunctory attention. The premium cabin where Marcus was seated as Michael James offered a perfect vantage point for observation. Karen's service pattern revealed an unconscious bias. She consistently responded more quickly to calls from male passengers in suits, while service requests from other passengers often required multiple attempts to gain her attention. The drink service became a masterclass in subtle discrimination. Premium passengers were offered drinks by name, their preferences remembered and anticipated, while economy passengers received minimal options, their requests sometimes met with barely concealed impatience. A young mother traveling with an infant requested warm water for a bottle. Karen's response was technically correct but notably less helpful than the assistance offered moments before to a business traveler seeking specific wine recommendations. The cabin crew's interactions with each other told their own story. During quiet moments, Marcus observed tensions between Karen and her colleagues, particularly Linda, the senior flight attendant. Their whispered conversations in the galley carried undertones of frustration, their body language suggesting ongoing conflicts that affected their service delivery. The service elements that Marcus had personally championed during his early days, personal touches, attention to detail, genuine warmth, were notably absent, replaced by efficient but soulless processes. Even the premium cabin experience fell short of the standards he had once insisted upon. Water glasses were left unfilled, magazines remained unstocked in seat pockets. The small touches that distinguished exceptional service from merely adequate were consistently overlooked. Marcus watched as Karen handled a series of routine requests, each interaction revealing more about the current state of Skyward's service culture. A passenger's inquiry about connection information was answered with minimal effort, directing them to the airline's app rather than providing personalized assistance. A request for an extra blanket was fulfilled without enthusiasm. The warm smile in Karen's training photos replaced by a professional but distant expression. The contrast between different passenger interactions became increasingly apparent. Business travelers, particularly older men in expensive suits, received proactive service, their needs anticipated and met with enthusiasm, while other passengers seemed to fade into the background, their requests treated as interruptions rather than opportunities for service excellence. The galley conversations overheard during quiet moments revealed deeper issues. Karen and her colleagues discussed staffing shortages, schedule changes, and management decisions, their whispered complaints painting a picture of growing disconnection between corporate policies and operational realities. The crew's interaction with the flight deck during brief moments revealed additional strains. Pilots' requests for cabin readiness were acknowledged emerged with subtle signs of tension suggesting communication issues that went beyond normal professional discourse. As the flight progressed, Marcus observed how the service standards deteriorated subtly. Cabin checks became less frequent, call button responses slower, the initial professional enthusiasm giving way to mechanical efficiency. The crew's energy noticeably diminished, their interactions with passengers becoming increasingly perfunctory rather than engaging. Marcus noticed how Karen's service pattern changed after a brief conversation with Linda in the galley, her subsequent interactions with passengers becoming more distant, her movements more rigid, suggesting an underlying tension that affected her performance. The subtle ways in which premium and economy passengers were treated differently became increasingly apparent, not just in service delivery, but in basic human interaction. The warmth and attention that had once been Skyward's hallmarks seemed reserved for a select few, while the majority of passengers received only basic courtesy. Each observation added to a growing picture of systemic issues that went beyond individual performance metrics, revealing deeper cultural challenges that had developed within the airline service structure. As the flight progressed, Marcus began to notice distinct patterns emerging in the service delivery and crew behavior. What had initially appeared as isolated incidents coalesced into clear systematic issues. The most obvious pattern emerged in the way the crew handled service requests. Economy passengers consistently waited 3 to 4 times longer for response to their call buttons than those in premium cabins. The crew's movement through the aircraft followed a predictable rhythm, but one that seemed designed to minimize interaction rather than enhance service quality. Karen's behavior in particular revealed a troubling pattern in passenger treatment. When serving premium cabins, she maintained eye contact, offered personalized recommendations, and engaged in brief but pleasant conversation. However, in economy, her interactions became increasingly mechanical, her eyes already moving to the next row before finishing with the current passenger. The pattern extended beyond individual service to systematic operational issues. The timing of drink services appeared designed to minimize crew workload rather than optimize passenger comfort. Snack services were rushed through with minimal options offered. The crew's body language shifted noticeably when moving between cabins, their shoulders tensing, their smiles becoming fixed and professional rather than genuine. As they entered economy, a disturbing pattern emerged in complaint handling. Premium passengers who voiced concerns received immediate attention and often compensation, while similar issues raised by economy passengers were met with rehearsed apologies and referrals to customer service. The crew's interactions with each other revealed their own patterns. Senior crew members like Linda maintained physical and emotional distance from junior staff, creating an atmosphere of hierarchy rather than teamwork. During quiet moments, Marcus observed how the crew gathered in small groups, their conversations marked by obvious divisions based on seniority and position. The handling of special requests highlighted another pattern. Passengers who appeared affluent or professionally dressed received creative solutions to their needs, while others were simply quoted policy and procedures. A passenger in premium cabin requesting a specific meal option unavailable on the menu received a customized alternative, while an economy passenger with dietary restrictions was simply told nothing could be done. The pattern of preferential treatment extended to basic services. Blankets and pillows were proactively offered in premium cabins, while economy passengers had to specifically request them, often to be told supplies were limited. The timing of service patterns revealed an emphasis on efficiency over customer satisfaction. Meal services were rushed through with minimal interaction. Crew members seemed to time their movements to minimize passenger engagement rather than enhance it. Bathroom access showed similar patterns. Premium cabin restrooms were checked and cleaned regularly, while economy restrooms were attended to only when absolutely necessary. The crew's break pattern suggested underlying staffing issues rather than taking staggered breaks that would maintain service levels. Crew members took simultaneous breaks, leaving sections of the aircraft without adequate coverage for extended periods. Information sharing followed its own troubling pattern. Flight updates and weather information were delivered first and more thoroughly to premium cabins, while economy passengers often received abbreviated or delayed communications. The pattern of resource allocation became increasingly apparent. Premium cabins were consistently overstocked with supplies, while economy regularly ran out of basic items like water and snacks. Crew coordination revealed institutional issues rather than working as a unified team. Different crew members operated almost independently, their movements rarely synchronized, their communications minimal and often tense. The handling of turbulence announcements demonstrated another pattern. Premium passengers received personal attention and reassurance while economy passengers dealt with generic overhead announcements. The crew's stress patterns became visible as the flight progressed, their professional demeanor cracking slightly during moments of pressure, revealing underlying tensions and fatigue. Storage space allocation followed familiar patterns. Premium passengers received abundant assistance in finding space for their belongings while economy passengers were left to manage on their own, often resulting in inefficient use of available space. Temperature control requests showed similar disparities. Premium cabin concerns were addressed promptly while economy complaints were often dismissed or ignored entirely. The pattern of passenger profiling became increasingly obvious. Crew members made quick visual assessments of passengers, adjusting their service level based on appearance and perceived status rather than actual needs or class of service. Documentation of issues followed a clear pattern. Problems in premium cabins were meticulously recorded while economy issues were often left unreported or minimized. The crew's energy management revealed concerning patterns, starting the flight with enthusiasm but rapidly declining in economy sections while maintaining higher energy levels for premium services. Even simple requests followed the pattern. Premium passengers asking for water received bottles while economy passengers got small cups filled from larger bottles. The timing of service recovery showed clear biases. Premium passenger issues were addressed immediately while economy passenger concerns were deferred or ignored. Entertainment system issues demonstrated the pattern. Premium passengers received immediate technical assistance while economy passengers were told to wait until after the flight. Child care assistance requests revealed similar disparities. Premium cabin families received attentive help while economy families were left to manage on their own. Meal timing patterns prioritized premium cabin convenience while economy service was rushed and inflexible. Crew rotation patterns suggested understaffing with minimal coverage during shift changes, particularly in economy sections. The documentation of passenger feedback followed established patterns. Premium complaints were escalated immediately while economy issues were logged for later review. Safety demonstration attention levels varied noticeably between cabins, with more personal attention in premium sections and perfunctory coverage in economy. The pattern of resource management became clear as supplies depleted. Economy services were cut back while premium levels were maintained. Even basic courtesies followed the pattern. Premium interactions included names and pleasantries while economy exchanges were brief and impersonal. The pivotal moment occurred during the mid-flight service period when the underlying tensions finally surfaced. Marcus, watching from his carefully chosen seat, observed the interaction between Karen and Linda unfold in the galley. The catalyst was seemingly minor. A passenger in economy had requested a special meal accommodation that hadn't been properly recorded in the system. Karen had attempted to find a solution by offering alternatives from the premium cabin inventory, a decision that brought her into direct conflict with Linda's strict adherence to service protocols. The confrontation began quietly, Linda pulling Karen aside, their voices low but their body language speaking volumes. Karen's shoulders were tense, her hands gripping a service tray too tightly, while Linda's stance was rigid, her expression stern and unyielding. The exchange, though whispered, carried clearly to Marcus's strategically positioned seat. Linda's voice carried years of corporate conditioning. "This isn't how we do things, Karen. You can't just take premium inventory for economy passengers. There are procedures we have to follow." Karen's response came with barely contained frustration. "But the passenger hasn't eaten anything since yesterday. Surely we can make an exception just this once." The tension escalated as Linda's reply cut through the ambient cabin noise. "We're not a charity service. If passengers want premium service, they should pay for premium tickets. Your job is to follow procedure, not create exceptions." The interaction revealed deeper systemic issues. Karen's relative newness to the role colliding with Linda's years of increasingly rigid adherence to corporate policy. The younger flight attendants' desire to provide genuine service conflicting with the senior crew members' focus on procedure and protocol. Marcus noticed how other crew members reacted to the confrontation, some busying themselves with unnecessary tasks, others watching surreptitiously, their own experiences clearly reflected in their expressions. The galley exchange continued, Linda's voice taking on an edge of corporate authority. "You need to understand how things work here, Karen. We have standards and procedures for a reason. Breaking them for one passenger means others will expect the same treatment." Karen's response came with quiet determination. "But isn't our job to take care of our passengers? Isn't that what Skyward used to be about?" The word used struck Marcus with particular force. Linda's reaction was immediate, her voice dropping even lower but carrying a sharp edge of warning. "You weren't here in the old days. Things have changed. We're a major major airline, now not some regional carrier running on good intentions. Focus on your job, follow the procedures, or find another position. The exchange marked a clear shifting point in the flight's atmosphere. Karen's subsequent service became noticeably more mechanical, her earlier attempts at genuine customer care replaced by rigid adherence to protocol. The impact rippled through the cabin. Other crew members adjusted their behavior, becoming more reserved, more procedural in their interactions. The tension manifested in subtle ways. Karen's hands trembled slightly as she served drinks, her customary smile replaced by a tight-lipped professional expression. Linda maintained a watchful presence, her supervision now more obvious, her interventions in service decisions more frequent. The passenger who had inadvertently triggered the confrontation remained unaware of the drama, their simple request for accommodation having exposed deep fractures in Skyward's service culture. Marcus observed how the incident affected the entire crew dynamic. Younger staff members became more hesitant in their decisions, constantly glancing toward Linda for approval before making even minor service choices. The atmosphere in the economy cabin grew notably colder, service becoming increasingly transactional. Karen's interactions with passengers shortened to bare minimums, her earlier warmth replaced by protective professional distance. The premium cabin service, while maintained at standard levels, lost its earlier hints of genuine care, becoming a perfectly executed but soulless performance. Linda's victory in enforcing procedure had effectively crushed the last remnants of spontaneous customer service. The galley became a tension zone, crew members timing their visits to avoid being there simultaneously. Conversations dropped to whispers or ceased entirely, the professional facade maintained for passengers barely concealing the underlying stress. Marcus noted how the incident reflected broader issues within Skyward's evolution from a customer-focused regional carrier to a procedure-driven major airline. The conflict between Karen's instinctive customer service and Linda's rigid procedure enforcement exemplified the company's drift from its founding principles. The impact on service delivery became increasingly apparent as the flight progressed. Karen's interactions with economy passengers grew shorter, more distant, her responses to requests becoming automatically negative, defaulting to policy rather than exploring solutions. Linda's supervision intensified, her presence a constant reminder of procedural requirements, her observations clearly making younger crew members nervous and hesitant. The cabin atmosphere shifted noticeably, passengers picking up on the underlying tension, their own behaviors becoming more reserved, their requests less frequent. The service pattern transformed into a strictly choreographed performance, all genuine human interaction stripped away in favor of procedural correctness. Other crew members adjusted their behavior, taking cues from the Karen-Linda dynamic, their own service becoming more automated, more distant. The incident created ripple effects throughout the cabin. Premium passengers noted the change in atmosphere, their usual service maintained but lacking its earlier warmth. Economy passengers experienced an even more pronounced shift, their requests now met with purely procedural responses. The creative problem-solving and genuine care that had occasionally surfaced earlier completely disappeared. Marcus observed how the confrontation had effectively demonstrated the broader issues within Skyward's service culture, the prioritization of procedure over passenger care, the suppression of initiative, the gradual erosion of the human element in service delivery. The galley incident became a microcosm of larger organizational issues, the conflict between maintaining standards and providing genuine service, the tension between experienced staff shaped by years of corporate evolution and newer employees still hoping to make real connections with passengers. The impact on crew morale was palpable. Karen's defeated compliance with Linda's directives, signaling a victory of procedure over purpose, other crew members watching and learning the unspoken lesson about survival in the corporate environment. The transformation of service delivery following the incident revealed how quickly corporate culture could suppress individual initiative. The flight's atmosphere never recovered from the confrontation, the remaining hours marked by rigidly correct but soulless service, the human connection that had occasionally broken through earlier completely submerged beneath layers of procedure and protocol. After the flight landed at Chicago O'Hare, Marcus deliberately delayed his exit from the aircraft, watching as other passengers filed past, observing the crew's end-of-flight procedures. The terminal provided new territory for investigation. The customer service desk, positioned prominently in the arrival area, became his next target. Approaching the desk, Marcus maintained his Michael James persona, carefully crafting his initial inquiry to probe deeper into the systemic issues he'd observed. Sarah, the customer service representative, displayed the same signs of stress he'd noticed in the flight crew, her professional smile masking evident fatigue, her name badge slightly askew suggesting a long shift already in progress. Marcus began his investigation with a measured approach, expressing concern about the general atmosphere he'd observed during the flight rather than lodging receiving specific complaints. Sarah's initial response was cautiously professional, the practiced phrases of customer service, but Marcus noticed how her eyes darted briefly to her supervisor's office before responding. He pressed further, describing the interaction he'd witnessed between Karen and Linda without revealing the full extent of his observation. Sarah's demeanor shifted subtly, her professional facade cracking slightly as she recognized elements of a familiar pattern. Her voice dropped lower, glancing around before sharing more candidly. "You're not the first person to notice these issues," she admitted. "The scheduling changes have been particularly difficult." The revelation opened a floodgate of information, Sarah's words carefully chosen but revealing deeper institutional problems. The customer service desk had become ground zero for mounting passenger frustrations, facing the direct impact of service degradation across the airline. The investigation deepened as Marcus gently steered the conversation towards specific operational issues. Sarah described increasing pressure from management to process passengers quickly rather than resolve issues thoroughly, metrics focused on transaction speed rather than resolution quality, the human element of customer service gradually being replaced by procedural efficiency. Marcus noted how other customer service representatives at nearby positions exhibited similar signs of strain, their interactions with passengers becoming increasingly transactional. Her revelations about staffing issues painted a troubling picture of systematic understaffing masked by increasingly demanding productivity metrics, the pressure to maintain statistical efficiency leading to rushed interactions and unresolved issues. The conversation revealed patterns of deteriorating employee morale extending far beyond the flight crew. Sarah described how recent policy changes had stripped customer service representatives of their ability to make judgment calls in passenger situations, requiring strict adherence to standardized response protocols. The investigation uncovered layers of bureaucracy that had accumulated between frontline staff and decision makers. Sarah describing multiple instances where obvious solutions to passenger problems were prevented by rigid procedural requirements. Marcus carefully probed the relationship between different departments, learning how communication breakdowns between flight crews, ground staff, and customer service had become commonplace, the lack of coordination creating cascading service failures. The discussion revealed how technology, intended to streamline operations, had often created new barriers. Sarah describing systems that prioritized data collection over practical problem-solving, passenger interactions increasingly filtered through digital interfaces rather than human understanding. The impact of corporate policies became clearer as Sarah shared examples of how performance metrics often worked against customer satisfaction. Representatives penalized for spending too much time with individual passengers regardless of the complexity of their issues. The investigation revealed a disconnect between corporate training emphasizing customer care and operational realities that made such care increasingly difficult to deliver. Sarah described how newer employees often arrived with enthusiasm for customer service only to have their initiative gradually suppressed by procedural requirements. Marcus noted patterns in how customer complaints were categorized and escalated, certain issues fast-tracked for resolution while others languished in procedural limbo. The handling of premium versus economy passenger concerns reflecting broader systemic biases. The conversation exposed how feedback from frontline staff rarely reached higher management levels. Sarah describing multiple instances where employee suggestions for service improvements disappeared into administrative void without response or acknowledgement. The investigation uncovered patterns of resource allocation that consistently favored cost reduction over service quality. Sarah revealing how basic customer service tools and resources had been gradually reduced in the name of efficiency, the pressure to maintain performance metrics leading to superficial problem resolution rather than genuine issue addressing. Marcus carefully noted how the customer service environment reflected larger organizational issues, the physical layout of the service area designed for processing speed rather than customer comfort, the visible security presence suggesting an expectation of passenger frustration. Sarah's descriptions of internal communication revealed systematic breakdown between departments, each operating in isolation, lacking the coordination necessary for effective service delivery. The investigation exposed how corporate policies often contradicted their stated customer service goals. Sarah describing situations where adherence to procedure actively prevented representatives from providing meaningful assistance to passengers. The conversation revealed patterns of employee turnover, particularly among newer staff members unable to reconcile their customer customer service aspirations with operational realities. Marcus observed how the customer service area itself reflected changing corporate priorities, its design emphasizing efficiency over engagement, its digital displays highlighting processing metrics rather than customer satisfaction measures. The investigation uncovered how technological systems meant to empower customer service representatives often constrained them, Sarah describing interfaces that prioritized data entry over problem resolution, the human element of customer interaction increasingly secondary to procedural compliance. The discussion revealed patterns of resource constraint that directly impacted service quality, Sarah describing how basic tools and supplies often became subjects of cost-cutting measures while expensive technological solutions failed to address fundamental service issues. Marcus noted how the physical arrangement of the customer service area created artificial barriers between representatives and passengers, the design subtly reinforcing the transactional nature of modern airline customer service. The investigation exposed systematic issues in how customer feedback was handled, Sarah describing processes that emphasized categorization and documentation over actual problem resolution. Passenger concerns filtered through layers of bureaucracy before reaching decision makers. The deeper revelations began emerging as Marcus continued his investigation beyond the customer service desk, venturing into the employee break areas and service corridors of O'Hare Terminal. Conversations with ground crew members revealed patterns that extended far beyond flight service. Maintenance technicians spoke in hushed tones about accelerated inspection schedules that prioritized quick turnaround over thorough examination. Baggage handlers described new efficiency metrics that measured speed over careful handling. Gate agents shared stories of impossible boarding deadlines that created cascading delays throughout the system. The truth about Skyward's operational reality emerged in fragments, each conversation adding another piece to a troubling puzzle. A veteran ground crew supervisor, Tom, speaking candidly during his break, described how the airline's rapid expansion had created operational blind spots. "We're running twice the flights with the same ground support," he explained. Equipment maintenance schedules stretched to their limits, staff working double shifts to cover personnel shortages. The revelation of systematic understaffing became clearer as Marcus engaged with different departments. Baggage handlers operating with minimal crew members, gate areas staffed below recommended levels, maintenance teams stretched across multiple aircraft. The human cost of efficiency metrics manifested in exhausted expressions and stressed interactions. A gate supervisor, Maria, revealed how computer systems meant to streamline operations often complicated simple tasks, describing incidents where common-sense solutions were blocked by rigid digital protocols. The revelation of technological barriers emerged as a recurring theme across departments, automated systems that couldn't handle real-world variables, creating bottlenecks and frustration. The disconnect between corporate policies and operational realities became starkly apparent in the cargo handling area, where workers described how new loading procedures designed by efficiency consultants actually increased handling time and raised error rates. The revelation of procedural dysfunction extended to security protocols, where staff described increasingly complex requirements that often contradicted practical safety needs. Break room conversations revealed deep-seated morale issues, employees sharing stories of reduced benefits, increased workloads, and diminishing job satisfaction. The human element of airline operations systematically undermined by corporate policies focused solely on numerical metrics. The revelation of communication breakdown between departments emerged as workers described how information silos prevented effective coordination. Maintenance crews unable to communicate directly with flight crews, ground staff disconnected from gate operations. The impact of cost-cutting measures became apparent in small but significant ways. Outdated equipment delayed replacements, minimal staff training budgets creating operational inefficiencies that far outweighed any savings. The revelation of safety concerns emerged carefully as maintenance workers described how pressure to maintain quick turnaround times affected their ability to perform thorough inspections. Routine checks abbreviated complex systems given cursory examination. The systematic degradation of service quality revealed itself in countless small details: reduced cleaning crews, abbreviated aircraft preparation times, minimal stock levels for basic supplies, all contributing to a deteriorating passenger experience. The revelation of employee burnout emerged consistently across departments, staff describing increasing pressure to maintain performance metrics while dealing with reduced resources and support systems. The human cost of corporate efficiency inefficiency clearly visible in exhausted faces and stressed interactions. The truth about scheduling practices emerged through conversations with crew schedulers who described impossible timetables created by algorithms that failed to account for real-world variables, creating cascading delays and staff exhaustion. The revelation of training inadequacies became apparent as newer employees described abbreviated orientation programs, reduced hands-on training replaced by computer modules that failed to prepare them for actual job requirements. The systematic breakdown of employee support systems revealed itself through stories of eliminated mentorship programs, reduced professional development opportunities, and minimal career advancement paths. The impact of corporate decisions on daily operations emerged through countless examples of policies created without operational input, procedures designed by consultants who had never worked in aviation, implementation of systems that complicated rather than simplified basic tasks. The revelation of morale deterioration extended beyond individual departments, showing a systematic breakdown in employee engagement, job satisfaction, and corporate loyalty. The human element of airline operations increasingly sacrificed to statistical efficiency and cost reduction. The truth about resource allocation emerged through discussions of maintenance budgets, staffing levels, and equipment replacement schedules, revealing patterns of short-term cost cutting that created long-term operational problems. The systematic dismantling of customer service capabilities revealed itself through stories of reduced authority to resolve problems, eliminated service recovery options, and rigid adherence to procedures regardless of circumstances. The revelation of safety margin erosion emerged carefully through discussions of maintenance schedules, crew rest periods, and equipment inspection protocols, showing how efficiency metrics increasingly pushed operational limits. The impact of corporate culture change became apparent through stories of how Skyward's original focus on customer service and employee welfare had gradually been replaced by rigid adherence to metrics and procedures. The truth about operational sustainability emerged as workers described how current practices were creating unsustainable pressures on both equipment and personnel, warning signs of systemic failure accumulating across departments. The revelation of communication breakdown between corporate leadership and operational staff emerged consistently, workers describing how feedback and concerns never reached decision-makers, creating growing disconnection between policy and reality. The systematic deterioration of operational excellence revealed itself through countless examples of compromised standards, reduced quality controls, and eliminated safety margins, all sacrificed to maintain efficiency metrics and cost controls. The truth about employee retention emerged through discussions of increasing turnover rates, particularly among experienced staff, their expertise and institutional knowledge lost to competing airlines offering better conditions. The revelation of systemic stress appeared in physical infrastructure, aging equipment, delayed maintenance, and postponed upgrades, creating operational challenges that directly impacted service quality. The impact of market pressure on operational decisions revealed itself through patterns of reduced service quality, compromised maintenance standards, and eliminated employee benefits, all justified by competitive necessity. The systematic erosion of Skyward's original culture emerged through stories of how customer service excellence and employee welfare had gradually been subordinated to statistical performance measures and cost reduction strategies. Following the initial investigations, Marcus initiated a series of carefully planned anonymous meetings with key personnel, beginning with Linda, the senior flight attendant whose interaction with Karen had revealed deeper systemic issues. The meeting, arranged through discreet channels, took place in a quiet hotel conference room away from the airport. Linda arrived punctually, her professional demeanor intact but showing signs of strain beneath the surface. As Michael James Marcus presented himself as a management consultant conducting an independent study of airline operations, the conversation began cautiously, Linda's responses measured and precise, but as Marcus skillfully guided the discussion deeper, her carefully maintained facade began to crack. 23 years with Skyward, she revealed, her voice carrying a weight of experience that transcended her current role. She spoke of the airline's evolution from a company that felt like family to a corporate machine that valued metrics over humanity, describing how the transformation had occurred gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, the changes coming in small increments, each seemingly reasonable on its own but collectively amounting to a fundamental shift in culture. Linda's revelation about staffing changes proved particularly illuminating, describing how experienced crew members were increasingly being replaced by younger staff trained in efficiency protocols rather than customer service. The cost-saving measures, she explained, went far beyond simple budget cuts affecting every aspect of flight operations from reduced training hours to eliminated crew rest periods. Her description of current working conditions painted a troubling picture of systematic overwork and underappreciation. Mandatory overtime stretched crews to their limits, while corporate policies increasingly restricted their ability to make independent decisions about passenger care. The meeting with Karen, arranged separately, revealed the perspective of newer staff members, her initial enthusiasm for airline service colliding with operational realities that prevented meaningful customer interaction. Karen described her training experience focusing heavily on procedural compliance while barely touching on actual customer care skills, her frustration evident as she detailed how corporate policies often prevented her from providing the level of service she believed passengers deserved. The conversation with ground crew supervisors revealed additional layers of operational stress. Thomas from maintenance described how accelerated inspection schedules created constant pressure to prioritize speed over thoroughness, his 30 years of experience telling him that current practices were unsustainable. Sarah from customer service expanded on her earlier revelations, describing systematic understaffing that left representatives unable to properly address passenger concerns. A series of meetings with pilots exposed concerns about scheduling practices that pushed flight crews to their legal limits while reducing their autonomy in operational decisions. Captain Rodriguez, with 18 years in the cockpit, described how corporate efficiency metrics increasingly influenced flight planning, sometimes at the expense of practical considerations. Each meeting added new dimensions to the emerging picture of systemic dysfunction. Baggage handlers described impossible loading schedules. Gate agents revealed pressures to board flights before proper preparation. Maintenance crews detailed corners cut in the name of efficiency. Flight dispatchers spoke of weather margins calculated to minimum requirements, all pointing to an airline that had lost its way in pursuit of statistical excellence. The meetings with middle management proved equally revealing. Department supervisors describing how corporate policies increasingly tied their hands, preventing them from addressing obvious operational issues. Their authority to make practical decisions gradually eroded by layers of procedural requirements. Long-term employees shared historical perspective, describing how Skyward's culture had shifted from service-oriented to metrics-driven. Newer staff members revealed how current training emphasized compliance over initiative, creating a workforce afraid to make independent decisions. The human resources perspective came from Sandra, a 20-year veteran who described how employee support systems had been systematically dismantled, benefits reduced, training abbreviated, career development opportunities eliminated, all in the name of operational efficiency. Catering supervisors detailed how meal service quality had been sacrificed to cost reduction, describing specific examples of how corporate policies prevented them from maintaining the standards that had once defined Skyward. Meetings with terminal operations staff revealed how architectural and procedural changes prioritized passenger throughput over comfort and service. Security supervisors described increasing pressure to maintain throughput metrics while dealing with reduced staffing and support. Meetings with union representatives, though technically outside his cover story, provided crucial insights into systematic employee concerns, patterns of grievances that pointed to deeper institutional problems. Regional managers, speaking under condition of anonymity, revealed how corporate policies often conflicted with local operational needs, creating impossible situations for frontline staff. Training instructors described how new hire programs had been shortened and simplified, eliminating crucial hands-on experience in favor of computer-based learning. Each meeting reinforced the emerging picture of an airline that had lost its connection to its founding principles, the direct engagement with key personnel, revealing how corporate evolution had created an environment where procedure trumped purpose, where metrics mattered more than mission, where employee initiative was sacrificed to standardization. The conversations consistently revealed patterns of disconnection between corporate policy and operational reality, between efficiency metrics and practical necessity, between statistical success and actual service quality. Technical operations managers described how maintenance schedules pushed equipment to limits while corporate policies restricted their ability to implement preventive measures. Customer service trainers revealed how new protocols emphasized speed over resolution, creating a system where problems were processed rather than solved. Station managers detailed how staffing formulas failed to account for real-world variables, creating constant operational stress. Quality control supervisors described how inspection criteria had been modified to accommodate faster turnaround times, sometimes compromising thoroughness for speed. Each meeting added layers of understanding to the systematic issues plaguing Skyward Airways, revealing how corporate evolution evolution had gradually transformed a once proud airline into a mechanism focused more on statistics than service. The direct engagement phase provided crucial insights into how procedural changes, policy modifications, and cultural shifts had collectively created an environment where employees felt powerless to provide the level of service they knew passengers deserved.